Hello, my name is Lily and today I'm going to be doing my TBR for non-fiction November. I was really excited to hear about this, I think in August for the first time. I was like, that is exactly what I need. I made myself a target this year that I would read more non-fiction because in the past I have loved non-fiction, especially natural history, nature writing, travel writing, but in the last few years since I left university I haven't really read any at all. And that's really a shame because I love it so much. So this year I made a target to read more and I haven't. I think I've read like 4 non-fiction books so far this year. Non-fiction November is exactly what I need, and I've compiled a list from my shelves of books I would really like to get to. There are 12 of them, so I definitely won't read all of them in the month. I usually read about 5 or 6 books a month. These are some of the ones that I've been looking on my shelves and thinking I've had them the longest, or I've been wanting to read them for the longest. So the first one is H is for Hawk by Helen Macdonald. This one I've had for ages. It's a really battered copy from a charity shop, and I don't really know much about it except that I think it's about the author's journey after suffering a bereavement to become a falconer or hawkner. I don't know if there's a difference, but I'm sure this book will tell me. And one of my friends in America, she did a class on literature to do with birds, and it was endlessly fascinating. Everything she told me, I really wished I was there. And one of the books I studied was this book, and my friend really loved it. So I'm very looking forward to reading this book. It's quite short, so hoping I'll read it quite quickly. It's supposed to have really beautiful writing as well. There's nothing better than a natural history book that is also beautifully written. The next one is called Deep Jungle, A Journey to the Heart of the Rainforest by Pearce. And this one is another one I picked up in a charity shop. It's got some cool pictures in it as well, and I think it's more of a scientific look at rainforests and how we explore them today compared to back in the 20th century. So it sounds really fascinating. It looks at lots of different civilizations that have lived in rainforests and jungles around the world, and the kind of biodiversity and things like that. So looking forward to that one. It's not one I've seen talked about at all. I've not even seen it in a bookshop. Published by Eden Project Books, so it might not be one that's wildly available, I'm not sure. The next book isn't nature writing, but it's called Noise, A Human History of Sound and Listening by David Hendy. I'm mostly interested in this one because I'm very curious about sound and how sound works. I write several deaf characters, so I've been doing a lot of research for a long time on the science of sound, how it works, how we understand it and how we use it in both technology and in the past. This I think would be a really interesting exploration. I think it goes all through history, from prehistory to the ancient times to current day technologies. I think it would also be really interesting in terms of where I work. I work in a deaf school, so my students' relationships with sound are all very varied. But I've had this one for ages, so I really should get to it. Oh, the cover is beautiful. Oh. Going back into nature writing is Steve Backshall's Looking for Adventure. Steve Backshall, I think, is my all-time favourite currently living naturalist and adventurer. I think he's a very honest and down-to-earth person. I love the way his programmes, they introduce us to the whole team, not just himself. Make sure we know who the cameramen are and everybody involved in his team. He's so very caring and just utterly passionate about the natural world and getting out there and doing stuff and about people, and his encyclopedic knowledge is incredible. I would love to meet this guy one day. This is his book about one of his early adventures to Papua New Guinea. I've read some reviews and it's supposed to be quite introspective and a little bit self-deprecating, I think, but I kind of expect that of Steve Backshall because he's a very down-to-earth person, a very emotional person, I think, and he's just very honest. He doesn't shy away from telling the truth. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one, though it is quite a big book, so I might have to read this one on a weekend. The next book is also nature writing, and this is Landmarks by Robert MacFarlane. This is a signed copy. I've had this book for ages. I think I got this with some Christmas money a couple of years ago when it first came out, and I've wanted to read it for a long time. Robert MacFarlane, he's one of my favourite naturalists. He's just written and published a children's picture book about the lost nature words. So it kind of links wonderfully in with this one, but it's been beautifully illustrated, and I really want to get that for my little cousins maybe. But I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. A journey through, I think, mostly Britain, but also other places as well, about the words that we use to describe the landscape and nature and the weather and happenings within those things, and how those words have changed, how they affect how we talk about nature and the landscape, and how those words are fading. So it's part exploration, part the stories around these words and the people that he meets who tell them to him, and also exploration of language itself. There's bits of glossaries and things like that in here, telling beautiful words. So I'm looking forward to that one. I really need to read it. I should probably go to the library and find a battered copy I can travel around with me though, because this one I'm quite precious about. The next one is also nature writing, but this one I think is more of a exploration of self, really. This is J. Griffiths' The Wild, An Elemental Journey. I actually began this one at the beginning of the year, I think in February, and I got about 50 pages in before the library wanted it back, and I just loved it so much. But a lot of it was going over my head, and this was a book I so desperately wanted to annotate, because there was so much that I just wasn't absorbing in quite the right way, or I wanted to revisit. Griffiths writes in quite a vivid and very literary style almost, and exploring quite deep, complicated concepts, while also going into philosophical arguments and all sorts of things like that. And there are a few things I disagree with her on, but at the same time she's quite hypocritical in some of her other views. But she's somebody that I would love to have an argument with. She's also somebody I agree with in a lot of ways. I really did enjoy what I did read of her book, and now I have got this very battered up old discoloured library copy I can annotate at will. So that one I'm hoping to get back to. I did read those 50 pages quite quickly, and actually it's not as big as it looks, so that's about 50 pages. So yeah, looking forward to that one. The next one is Leaving Nature Writing Again. This is Being Deaf, The Experience of Deafness, edited by George Taylor and Juliet Bishop. And this was a book given to me by a colleague at work, the Communication Support Workers Library. And this is a collection of lots of different people's experiences of being deaf or being deafened. The history of deafness and education is quite complex. In Britain, we've only recently accepted British Sign Language as a language, so there's been a long history of fighting for deaf rights and things like that. So I'm really keen to hear from actual deaf people about their experiences, and this book I think is a great starting point. There's some interesting annotations in here that are very clearly by deaf people. The next book is one that arrived yesterday morning, and I've already dipped into it, so this one might get read in October. This is Doubling Back, 10 Paths Trodden in Memory by Linda Cracknell. This is a non-fiction book by the author of Call of the Undertow, which is one of my favourite books of this year. Call of the Undertow is one of the first books in Sadie's Bookish Musings Moth box, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and I was really keen to see if Linda Cracknell had actually written more, and it turns out she has. She's written this, which is a non-fiction book about 9 different walking journeys that she has made. They're not just journeys she has made once, these are return trips to those places, and they're not just explorations of her own memories of those places and how they link to herself, but also the other writers who have explored them. So the first chapter I read was about a walk near Boscastle in Cornwall, and the connections that she made with Thomas Hardy, who also went there as a writer, with his wife, and how he returned there after her death. And it's beautiful. Like, Linda Cracknell can really write, and that was one of the things I was most hoping for when I was looking for other books by her, because Call of the Undertow has such vivid exploration of the landscape. The main character, she's a cartographer, she escapes up to northern Scotland, and the whole book is so vivid and so central in place, and the landscape and nature are almost like a character themselves, and I love it when writers do that. So this book, because it's nature writing, I'm so excited for, and her writing is just astoundingly beautiful. She's so very sensitive to the changes in nature around her, weather, and just, I can't describe it well enough. But yeah, I'm so looking forward to this. This is a second-hand copy, so it's a little bit battered, so I might end up annotating it, because I only annotate books that are already a bit battered, because I'm afraid to batter up books that aren't battered up already. Even got some really cool little maps in it that I think she's drawn herself. They all look hand-drawn. The next book would actually be a reread for me. It's called Pieces of Light, New Science of Memory by Fernyhough, I think. And this is a book about the theory that really intrigued me when I was at university, that memories aren't just stored in a database in our brains, but are recreated anew every time we recall them. And that theory is something that's driven a lot of the research and theories in my own book. This I'd like to revisit, just to really kind of refresh those ideas and look more into the science, because I've totally taken this down a completely fantasy route, and it should probably do me some good to actually get some proper scientific grounding again. Yeah, so try and get to that one again. I really did enjoy it the first time I read it. It's quite personal, I think, to Charles Fernyhough as well. He tells a lot of story about how his children were growing up and his own connections and musings on his own memory as well. The next one is a memoir, because I thought, I should read something other than nature writing and science writing. So I've got Our Zoo by June Mottershead, and this I picked up because I really enjoyed I think it was BBC, I'm not sure, it might have been ITV, but there was a series, I think this time last year, made of this book. It's about June Mottershead, whose father sets up Chester Zoo, I think in the 30s, yeah, in the 30s, and he starts by just collecting animals into their home, and they buy a big house, and they have lots of trials and tribulations, as it were, and it's really beautiful and cosy and warm, and I love the family unit, and I love books like this, so I'm really excited to read this one. Okay, yay! And the last one is similar. It's Gerrald Durrell's Birds, Beasts and Relatives, and this is a follow-up to My Family and Other Animals, which is one of my favourite books of all time. And I haven't read this book. I haven't read it. I picked it up in a charity shop not long ago, so I'm so excited to read it, because more Gerrald Durrell. I cannot get enough of him in my life. So I'm really keen to read more of Gerrald Durrell. I love his writing, and I can't wait. I can't wait. I want to read it right now. I should stop. But yeah, so that's my very ambitious pile of books that I would like to read for non-fiction November. Let me know if you've read any of them, if you're also as obsessed with nature writing and natural history as I am. If you have any recommendations for me, that would also be great, though this is probably already quite an ambitious pile. So I'm looking forward to when November begins. I'm also maybe planning on doing NaNoWriMo, so we will see how that goes alongside trying to read a lot of books. But that's all from me today. I hope you're having a good week. Happy reading. Goodbye.